I thought it was about time I made another video about my GoPod. If you enjoy my GoPod content, do let me know in the comments, and while you're there, don't forget to like and subscribe because that's always a joy. Now, a couple of things I've not covered in my previous videos are the motor mover and how I prepare my pod for winter. When I bought the GoPod, I hummed and hawed a lot about the options. It's a lot of money and I wanted to keep costs down, so I almost didn't get a few things. GoPods might be one of the cheaper caravans, but they're still expensive, and I thought saving £100 here and there might be a good idea, but if you do that and then make your pod harder to live with, that's not a saving at all. The best example of this is the front box. Compared to the price of the pod, it doesn't cost much and it gives a huge amount of extra space. It's such an obvious addition that in new GoPods that's now a standard feature and you don't have to actually add it as an extra. However, the motor mover isn't so clear cut, it's more expensive, and there are caravans out there about 4 times the size of the pod without them. However, I'm really glad I invested in the motor mover. Yes, you can push the pod along easily, it's tiny, but I mainly pod alone and I'm using it as accommodation at shows, and that means I'm camping in rough fields without electricity and I'm parking late at night. I've driven a long way, I've almost certainly set a camp somewhere else up first, I'm tired. To have the motor mover makes my life vastly easier. And there was the time I broke my toe, and I don't think I'd have done the show if I hadn't had the motor mover. And most importantly, the GoPod is so cute that whenever you're driving it around, people just smile, and that's really worth everything. So here's the pod motor moving about, cosy in its winter cover, which I now know how to put on after making such a meal of it the first time. Now, to use the motor mover, you first have to connect it to the pod battery. The control for this is in the cupboard under the fridge. This is the usual position. This is the position it is in when you connect it to the battery. Once that switch is in that position, you can now use the remote control to control the motor mover. The remote control's got a 9-volt battery, so it's always a good idea to have a spare. It's very easy to replace, just need a small screwdriver. The motor mover is powered up by pressing the 2 power buttons at the same time. Once it's settled down, it's time to engage the motor mover onto the wheels of the pod. This is done by pressing these buttons, and the motor mover rollers slowly move forward to press onto the tyres. These rollers really press into the tyres, and once they're engaged, you can move the pod forward and backwards, and you can even turn it because these 2 rollers, one on each wheel, move independently. Obviously, you don't want to tow the pod with the motor engaged, or I have heard of someone who's done it and it didn't destroy the motor mover, which is a surprise to everybody involved. So you need to stow the motor mover, and that's done by pressing these buttons. One gotcha is that you have to wait for the motor mover to finish moving and to settle down. And you can't do anything, you can't move it around until that's happened. So it's not gone wrong, it's just still moving. And the way it shows you it's done, if it flashes the lights on the controller like this. So now the motor mover's on, you use these buttons to move it about. And very careful, that's the front of the pod. So turn it that way around, that moves it forward, that moves it back. Moving the pod about is actually a lot of fun. It's like having a huge remote-controlled car, and it makes everybody smile, including me. Another way the motor mover has made my life easier is putting the pod onto its tyre savers. Now, tyre savers are exactly what you'd think they are. They're devices that make the tyres last longer. These ones are made from strong curved plastic. It supports the tyres and prevents flat spots if you're leaving the pod in the same place for a long time. However, they do have these little inclines you'd have to push the pod over, but it's an absolute doddle. It's absolutely so easy with the motor mover. However, I don't use the motor mover for the jockey wheel tyre saver. That just never went well, and I've found a much better way to do it. Once the pod is on its main tyre savers, just put the steadies underneath the chassis, making sure it's the chassis they're under, not the fiberglass body. Then just raise the jockey wheel, put the tyre saver underneath it and lower the wheel. This is so much quicker and easier. Once that's all done, I put a dehumidifier inside the pod. There's a lot of them on the market, but this is the one that I've got. And these little white balls melt if there's water in the air, trapping the water in the unit. The pod will get cold, it's winter and there's no heating, but if it's not damp, it won't get mouldy. And I've not had any problem with mould, but I'd rather be safe than sorry, and that's why I take the cushions off the sides as well. Another thing I nearly didn't buy is the GoPod specific winter cover, and it's another thing I think is really worth the money. I want my GoPod to be in the best condition for as long as possible, and the winter cover will really help with that. What's even better, it's got a clear panel that goes over the solar panel, so it allows the solar panel to charge the battery over winter. This is great, but there isn't much sun in winter, and you really don't want the battery to go beneath 10.5 volts. So I think it's a good idea to charge the battery every now and then. The main problem with this is that GoPods have a 16 amp socket and most homes don't. So all you need to do is buy this adapter, it's not very expensive, plug it in and you can charge the pod from home, and I take it with me so I can charge the pod anywhere. So that's about it. Give the pod a good clean, put on its winter cover, put it on the tyre savers, use a dehumidifier, charge it occasionally. That's all it really needs to get it through the winter and make it ready for the next season. Personally, I also prefer to keep a guardvark and a wolf in the pod. I've been told this is cruel, but if the guardvark and the wolf aren't in the pod, who's going to look after it? So that's my video. Please do enjoy your GoPodding as much as I enjoy mine. Please like and subscribe, and see you the next time.